Sonic Jam might be the most important game I've ever played. Now, I know that sounds absolutely absurd. This Sonic compilation from the Sega Saturn, barely a game in its own right, couldn't possibly hold any merit on its own. I recently jumped back into this title for the first time in at least 20 years, because it just felt right for a Sonic title to be the first game that I tried out on my brand new Poly Mega. And unfortunately, the Genesis module for the system was not included in my initial shipment, so Sonic Jam it would be, a game that has somehow remained in my personal collection some 25 years, despite the numerous and often far more robust other compilations that have featured these classic Sonic titles. First off, let me note this is not a review of Sonic Jam. You can basically sum this game up in a few sentences anyways. Sonic Jam is first and foremost a compilation of the four main Genesis/Mega Drive Sonic titles, 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles. Along with it comes Sonic World, the first attempt at bringing Sonic's gameplay to a real 3D space. In fact, this 3D space within the game is actually a prototype build for Sonic Adventure, which would eventually miss release on the Saturn altogether and become a launch title for the Dreamcast some 2 years later. Instead, what I want to tell is the story of how this relatively random Sega Saturn title, one that is barely worth remembering for most people, legitimately changed my entire world perspective. As I started a Twitch stream of Sonic Jam's tiny but vibrant little open world, the first thing I had to check out was the little theater which features a selection of Sonic commercials and promotional pieces. As the slow, relaxing tune that accompanied entering the theater hit my ears for the first time in over 2 decades, I was struck with a completely unexpected sense of nostalgia. Not for the Genesis titles in this collection, but for these little showcases featured in this game that would legitimately change my life forever. Let's rewind the clock. It's 1993. Jurassic Park and Mrs. Doubtfire are the biggest movies of the year. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were still the sickest thing ever, and the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers had just debuted in the United States. 5-year-old me has discovered the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog on the afternoon cartoon block and absolutely won't shut up about it. So, what's my big Christmas gift for that year? A brand new Sega Genesis with Sonic 2 bundled with it. I like to joke that from this point onwards, my life has been entirely downhill, because while I'd played some games with friends on the NES and the Atari beforehand, this was it. This was it. This was the game. The sense of speed, the vibrant colors and levels, the amazing soundtrack, everything just clicked with me in a way no other game before this one had. And just like that, I was a Sega kid. Jump the clock forward 4 more years to 1997. I'd owned my Sega Saturn for 2 years at this point and played the ever-loving crap out of games like Virtua Cop, Fighting Vipers, Virtua Fighter 2, Sonic 3D Blast, and so many more, but I was itching for something new from the Blue Blur. The game I was really looking forward to was Sonic R, a new racing game that was due out that holiday season, but I distinctly remember coming across a picture in a magazine previewing Sonic Jam's 3D open world and knowing I need this game. 3D added to Mario made a stellar game, so 3D added to Sonic must make a crazy one too, right? Before I get into the Sonic World section of this game, I should really speak briefly about the 4 Genesis titles that are the meat of this game: Sonic's 1, 2, and 3, and Sonic and Knuckles. There's not really much I can say about these classics that hasn't been said a million times over. As a whole, they're still considered the standard by which all other Sonic games are measured. It's interesting to know this now, but these are not emulated versions of the Genesis classics. These are brand new ports of the games built to work on Saturn hardware. It's kind of wild to think about that nowadays, because that's a lot of effort for a port of 4 games, but it also helps explain how each game comes with 3 difficulty options, including an easy mode which removes many pitfalls, spikes, and other obstacles from stages for a much more simplified Sonic the Hedgehog experience. This really was, up to this point, the most complete and convenient way there had ever been to play the classic Sonic titles. I do want to point out, despite my claim of being a Sega kid, this was actually the first time I'd ever had the opportunity to beat Sonic and Knuckles. See, for some reason, the first player controller port on my Genesis just stopped reading the inputs for up and down, which made getting past the Mushroom Hill Zone in Sonic and Knuckles quite literally impossible, much to my chagrin. By now, little 9-year-old me had figured out that the internet was a thing and had learned that by combining 3 and Knuckles, you now had 7 more Hyper Emeralds, Hypersonic, and an entirely secret level added on to the end of the game featuring one of the very best songs there has ever been in a Sonic title. It was the heart of summer vacation. I had just grabbed Sonic Jam from my local Toys R Us. I was finally going to beat every Sonic game. But first, this open world. It was so vibrant, so loud, such a wonderful representation of what I'd hoped a 3D Sonic could feel like. Tails was flying around, there were rings to grab, islands to hop onto, and springs to bounce off of, and that was it. It was just this tiny little hub world that we got. No loops, no enemies, no bosses, no levels, nothing. To say the excitement wore off quickly would be an understatement. So, okay, I might as well check out what these little buildings are then, right? Now, I know this sounds a bit dramatic and over the top, but in true retrospect, going into this little movie theater featured in Sonic Jam and finding these commercials for the first time truly marked a turning point in me, not just as a Sonic fan, but truly me as a gamer and as a person in general. See, to little 9-year-old me, the Sonic I saw on afternoon television and the Sonic I'd played in these games were one and the same. These were the only representations of this character I'd yet been exposed to. So, imagine being a kid who had, until this point, only been aware of really the American presentation of Sonic, Sega, and really all video games, suddenly being presented with this.
Oi oi! みんなが君を随分と待っていたぞ!
Sonic が超音速で弾け飛ぶピンボールゲームに挑戦だ。アメリカ生まれのファンキーアクション、Sonic Spinball!
Holy crap, what is this? Where is this all coming from? Why isn't this in English? The commercial that really stood out to me was the one featured for Sonic 3. This may very well have been my first exposure to Japanese culture outside of a random mid-90s anime that I came across in any way. This loud, in-your-face, zany advertisement that barely featured any actual gameplay of Sonic 3. And then there's this crazy Sonic anime featuring a Metal Sonic that looks bonkers. Knuckles is wearing a Crocodile Dundee hat. This complete acid trip of an animation for an unfinished Sonic ride? I had to know more. And lucky for me, there were other buildings to check out. First was the Hall of Fame, which made my head almost instantly explode upon the revelation that Sonic games had different box art depending on which region the game was released in. Not only that, but there were entire Sonic games out there that I didn't even know existed because they had only been released in Japan. There was a Sonic fighting game? This further proved to me that the image I had of the blue blur in my mind was not a universal one. My experience was entirely different, not just because of what media I'd been exposed to, but because the character was presented in an entirely different way depending on the region the game was being released and marketed in. Last up was the art gallery. I entered expecting yet again to see the Sonic I was used to on afternoon television, and instead I was inundated with an image and attitude of Sonic that felt uniquely different to the cartoon I'd grown up watching. This character I thought I knew so well suddenly had an entirely second identity, which, while similar in many ways to the Sonic I knew, was somehow much more alive and energetic than the image I'd formed in my mind. This image in particular really stuck out to me. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles in what looked like the mall of the future, an incredibly bright, vibrant, and energetic image that suddenly felt much more in line with the presentation of the games than the animations that I knew. My world had suddenly exploded with possibility. What other things were different? What else didn't I know about my favorite things? What other crazy games were there out there that I wasn't paying attention to? So, with all the wild abandon expected of a 9-year-old with unlimited internet access in the late 90s, I dove in to learn more about Sonic, about gaming in general, about what it was like to be a gamer in places outside of America. And this is where I really started to learn about things like JRPGs and the differences between the Genesis and the Master System, or the NES and the Famicom, about gaming news coverage outside of random issues of GamePro or EGM that I could find at the supermarket, about cheat codes and game guides and online forums and people sharing their strategies and love for an extremely wide and vibrant set of games that I had never even heard of. As weird as it sounds, out of all the titles that could have transformed video games from being just an afternoon with friends to my core interest, into something that I consider one of the biggest parts of my identity, into something I wanted to actively learn about and discover more of the culture around, it was Sonic Jam that initialized that first step. Out of all the games that could have done it, Sonic Jam is the game that really made me a gamer. I truly believe that without this small open world, this tiny Sonic Adventure prototype and its little museums, my gaming journey would have been very different. The types of games I enjoy, the media I consumed as a child and young teenager, the circle of friends and shared interests I'd eventually make, none of this would have been the same. And I wouldn't have it any other way.